Welcome to a new season of the College Admission TV podcast. In Season 3, we explore the intersection of AI, education, and the future of the workforce. This fast-changing space calls for strong leadership and bold ideas. In this episode, we're joined by President Thom Chesney of Southwestern College.
President Thom Chesney, good afternoon. Welcome to the third season of Plexus podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, JP. It's great to be here. It's good to see you again.
Fantastic. So we have a very exciting season of ahead of us. Is focused on AI education and the future of workforce. And I'm pleased to have you as our first university president to join this podcast. Thom, we've known each other for a while now, and you've been a president of several institutions. Currently, Thom Chesney is the president of Southwestern College and New Earth Institute in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Thom, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your current role as well, please?
Sure. And you've nailed it. I'm right here in Santa Fe at a different institution. That's the best kind of background I can give, is that my journey is one that has traversed public and private institutions, 2- and 4-year institutions, faculty member, administrator, president of a community college, then a small Catholic liberal arts university, and now a graduate institute only focused on counseling, therapy, and leadership degrees here based online and on-site in Santa Fe.
Fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit about your institution?
Sure, I would love to. Our mission is simple: transforming consciousness through education. And that emphasis on counseling and therapy, for example, I think kind of sits right in the center of that. So one of the unique features that graduate students experience here is it's a fully experiential, holistic learning approach that we take. So the first learning that students do is to look inward, go inside. And you think about that from a counseling and therapy background. Someone sitting before you and you are there as their client, knowing that they themselves have been through the process of receiving counseling, therapy, may draw you a little closer in terms of that feelings of trust, that sense that they're putting you before them. So altruism and a consciousness-centered education is really central to what we've been doing for about 50 years. Our founding was in 1976, so we've got a big anniversary coming up next year.
Fantastic. So again, thank you for joining. And for our audience, our goal in this season, we're going to be interviewing and having podcasts with many presidents. And our goal is to understand how presidents and senior leaders of higher education in these interesting times see the future impact of AI on employment trends. We like to see what steps are institutions taking to integrate AI awareness into their curriculum and pedagogy, frankly. And more importantly, how do we train the future workforce knowing that the world is going to be so different than it is today in all fields? It's not just liberal arts, but in all fields. Are we going to be replaced? Are we going to be enabled? It's much more than the Industrial Revolution. This is something that uncharted territory. So with that, I guess I'll start with this. How do you perceive the impact of AI on the future workforce? Let's just start with the most obvious question.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be pretty profound, actually, and having more than a toe in the water, paying attention, being engaged is going to put institutions, put workers, put students in a better position than just sort of sitting back. If ever there was a time, you just mentioned Industrial Revolution. I heard someone refer to the AI revolution as the extraterrestrial revolution, because it goes, it goes beyond the data mining and the data centers and all that, all of the energy that it takes to do this work. But seriously, I think that paying attention piece is where some of it starts. And asking, starting into it from a position of curiosity, just wanting to know, what might this mean for what I'm doing as a faculty member, for example. So let me just start there. Like, if I have an expertise in a certain area, and I want to keep it really broad, take it way beyond my institution, because I've been in so many different places. How might I get in touch with, get a taste of, engage with AI in some sense? So as a longtime writing literature teacher, for example, for me, I know that AI could help me find some of the resources that I need to put together a class, put together the works of literature, for example, that are more reflective of my student body, for example, if I want to do that. So I can sculpt a class, shape a class, and the content around my students. And then I can take that next step to shape my pedagogy. And you mentioned that too, for example. What if the students come to us having done some assessments of their writing and reading abilities and so forth, and we can put that into an engine and determine, hey, these students might benefit from more experiential learning. These students might benefit more from taking this short story and having it come to them as a podcast rather than reading it in a print material in front of them. So I'm kind of jumping in already. You can see I'm already exploring. I'm going into different spaces. But the main point of that is, right now, making sure that in every sense, employer, educator, future employee, student, that we're engaged, we're paying attention, because then we can also be in that position to shape.
Now, your students, what jobs do they typically land on? What is the career path currently?
So the vast majority are master's degree prepared art therapists, counselors with an art therapy certification. We have other types of certification specialties. Think of like ecotherapy, for example. So they're going into the caring professions, the healing professions. Huge demand for that right now nationwide. There's a great need for that. So that's where the center of their work is. Conversation that we're having about AI, well, that's a very human field, what I'm talking about. That is most often one-to-one, small group settings. You can have intensive group therapy that goes on at different types as well. So it's like AI, well, some of them, certainly our students of the recent past today, they come with that healthy question of, am I going to be replaced or am I going to be augmented? What is it the fit for me going to be? And one of the things is, it's the research and literature that's out there in the field. AI gives them a chance to take some of that and assimilate it, or take a look at it. It's not a substitute for reading, critical reading, and deep reading, but in terms of surveying the lit, you can very quickly find what are the resources I want to look at, spend more time with, for example. So in terms of accelerating some of the time, or being able to give more quality time, say for a counseling client, because you've had a chance to take in more learning, that could be very advantageous. So actually, the effect of AI in our students' fields could be, it actually gives them more time to have a personal transformational relationship that they'll have with clients when our graduates are therapists or counselors.
It's interesting because as you think ahead, because I think asking the question, are you equipped, is unfair. I think probably the better question would be, what are you planning to do to equip and educate students for careers with the advent of AI disruption? What is it going to take to, I guess, integrate and equip AI disruption into your curriculum?
Well, the key there, I think, is going to be, again, engagement of another type. And that means, looking at the content as we have it right now. We're constantly doing curricula review, and like every institution, we're doing, program level assessment. We look at course level assessments. How do our students perform? Are the learning outcomes that they need for licensure, for example? Our programs, require licensure to go out in the field and practice, for example. How is that going to be keeping up? How are they going to be prepared in such a way that they're able to do that, seek that, and proceed in the careers that they hope to have? Many of them hope to do that for the very long term, whether it's in a private practice or they join, say, a hospital practice, a clinical practice, a group practice of some kind. So that engagement piece is right now making sure that not only the faculty and staff who build the curriculum, research the curriculum, are at the table together. I think it's really important, and I think this is going to be important across all fields. The students at the table as well, talking about how they learn, talking about what their concerns or questions are. Like I said, briefly earlier, that curiosity and wonder phase that we can actually be a part of right now is really important, because when you have that inclusive conversation, faculty and students and instructional designers at the table as well, for example, you can ask those questions. Well, I wonder if we might be able to use this. Could we use this as a tool? Could we use this as a support or something to help navigate students through something? Are there elements that are sort of operational that it might be nice to leave to sort of a chat bot or some kind of a function that way, as maybe a warm-up, as maybe a way of breaking students into a familiarity with something before they come into the room, and then they're on with their professor. They're on being in front of their classmates, for example. But all those questions right now, or many of them, can be those questions of wonder. Can we try this? Should we try this? And the answer to, I think, many of those is going to be yes. This is the time to experiment, to try, to be curious, to test out the many tools. So many of the providers, this makes me feel like other times in the technological revolution of the last few decades at least, right? So many of the providers are willing to sort of give you something, try it out, test it. Look how ChatGPT came to us, for example, before some of the limits on use or how you go about using it. We should be early adopters, I think, of experimenting with the tools to see how they might benefit, but in so doing, include all of the potential users thereof.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of AI-powered counseling services already, right? Like I think,
Sure.
Was it Uper, Replica? There are a bunch of these tools that are out there today. And it seems interesting to me is that, empathy and the clinical piece, might obviously, I don't want to answer the question that I asked, but just kind of inferring from what you're saying is that it might allow the clinician to actually dive much deeper now that they have the additional information and data points using. So you think that AI might actually help improve the clinical process because now you have data behind it, you have someone has had a chance to express themselves, and you could look at that data and come up with some even deeper treatments, perhaps. Well, what industries do you think are going to be most affected, at least in the immediate 5 to 10 years, as far as redefined and recreated as a result of AI? What kind of sticks out to you immediately?
Yeah, there's many. I think one that comes to the forefront, because not surprisingly, the impact is already there. You think of computer engineering programmers and those roles, and when I'm, refreshed by and sort of excited by when I hear people in those roles, they're not typically talking about how they think their jobs are going to be eliminated. It's more about just what you said. In so many fields, the chance to be able to specialize and focus in something. So if I'm using generative AI to do some programming for me, because it helps speeds that process, it's also allowing me to be even more insightful, spend even more surgical time, if you will, in going in and looking at for specific errors or nuance or checking the work versus doing all of the work and then looking for someone else to check it, or getting exhausted even, and then coming back and checking my own work. In my field, my formal training, so much of it is in writing, for example. Mm-hmm. Very similarly, I'm creating new content all the time, but I'm feeding a great deal of that now into AI, getting that first review. It's absolutely my intellectual property, but now I'm getting a fresh take before I share it with someone else. Getting a critique, some commentary, and so forth. And plus, that's being captured for the next thing I write, or someone else writes, or someone else contributes to it. And then I'll go back to what, the counseling and healthcare professions, for example. That collection of data that's happening, say, through an artificial intake, through, it starts out in an AI space that maybe helps narrow some things down or bring some focus. I think about that with my own doctor. I had some, minor surgery recently. And she told me on the front end, she was going to record the conversation that we had, because she was going to put it into ChatGPT and see if it, it started bringing it, to some kind of a focus. And it did, which allowed her to focus. I still had a very caring doctor spending time with me in the room, but it accelerated her time to getting to the work that I needed to have done, for example. So there was that, again, that curiosity that before the embrace, and not in any one of those examples being supplanted, being substituted for. I think we haven't really talked about it yet, but that also takes some of the fear and the edge off a little bit as well. If we get in there, we experiment, we play a bit, it becomes familiar enough to start to make good decisions and decisions that are based in integrity as well. Haven't run into a doctor yet who's saying, oh, let this replace me. It's more like, how can this make me be even more effective as a physician, a counselor, a writer?
So this question might be a little repetitive, but are you planning to develop or implement strategies when it comes to AI student careers?
I lost you just for a second there. Go ahead and ask that full question.
I'm talking about student career readiness. Are you thinking about strategies to address AI impact on student career readiness? Like, how are you talking to students? Is this even coming up at this point? How's this all happening at your institution?
Yeah, so at the most basic sense, so one of the things here at Southwestern College that works to our benefit of our students in particular is, even as a graduate institution, robust career planning services and getting them engaged and preparing to go out into the work world. You don't always have that necessarily in graduate school. Your experience and mine may have varied, but sometimes it's kind of you're put out there to get the degree and go out and figure out what's next, how you're going to use it. Here, we're able to, with our partners in the clinical, the practicum, the internship settings, learn from them. How are they starting to think about using AI, for example? And if in the most basic sense, it's doing pre-screening, it's what they're looking for when a resume comes in, and or a cover letter, or how it prepares, how that's going to happen. Our students need to know that. You're in a very hands-on, human-to-human career field, but many of your prospective future employers are looking to use tools to help match you to them, or maybe exclude you from them based on the things you say, write, and do. So we have to bring that forward to them in that most basic sense. And then similarly, as we see this develop, like within the larger healthcare systems, we have a couple of larger ones here right in Santa Fe, and certainly across the state of New Mexico. If one of the ways in which they're bringing to fruition our behavioral healthcare trust fund, which is going to fund a lot of these initiatives for New Mexicans to have the kind of brain health, mental health care that they need. then if we're going to be the providers of the clinicians who go into those fields, it needs to be in alignment with how that's going to happen. How we're going to reach through really excellent telehealth in some cases, some more remote and rural areas. We need to know how to use the tools. So our students need to be, on the one hand, comfortable with the very highly, like I said, experiential, holistic learning that they do, but then also pairing that with how do I bring those skill sets then into a virtual space, into a space where I might, click from one client to another, and in between, there's been some AI assessment that's happened of them. Those who are able to navigate some of that, get a feel for some of that, a taste of that, are going to be top prospects to be hired, and also, again, feel more fluent and comfortable in using the tools that make them better practitioners.
Now, higher education, the board of trustee, they all come from variant backgrounds and degree of sophistication when it comes to technology, because they're bringing different values to a board meeting. What's going on in your board? What kind of discussion percolates when it comes to AI, and how, from top down, what are the thought processes that happens in the boardroom?
Yeah. And there again, it's myriad things, right?
Yeah.
So, some are very kind of operational, tactical. For example, we've used AI to help us more efficiently and quickly when we're writing some of the information that goes into a board packet, believe it or not, help us write a resolution that's formal, fits a structure, and does that. Nobody really cares about how creative and how innovative you are in making a statement about making a change to procurement policy or something like that, but it accelerates that. So that's on a very minor sense, but it's still bringing the tools into the boardroom, still bringing it into that. And it's included within our AI policy. One of the things that we've decided, for example, here, and this is a very relevant, germane conversation for the Board of Trustees at Southwestern, is how do we want employees, for example, and students, or in this case employees, to use these tools, and where do we not want them to? And in our case, again, that mission, transforming consciousness through education, very human-centered. So one of the decisions that we've made is we don't rely on it as the sole provider of knowledge decision making. So we've said very clearly in our most recent iteration of our AI policy, for example, AI is not going to make the decision about hiring. It's not going to make the final decisions. It may be influence in some way, bring information to help hiring and compensation, and even help some determinations about where can we best do some of our recruitment of students, for example. That's just a smart use of. So some efficiency, some bringing time back to our employees is really important. So the kind of questions our governing board, our trustees are asking is, how can it help you be more effective? It's all about the people we do have, the roles that we do have, evolving and continuing to become more effective. Haven't had a single conversation about having it eliminate something, unless it's eliminating downtime, eliminating busy work, for example. If AI can help us take all of our job descriptions and begin to reshape those into a consistent template so they have the look and feel, and it's easier to do things like a market study of compensation, to advertise better when we are recruiting, to retain our employees better, then we want to use that, because it's a supplement, it's a companion, but it's not autonomous. It's not doing it on its own, and we're not leaving the work to AI.
Well, there's an argument to be made. 10 years ago, if you went to a supermarket and there was a self-checkout, it might have been 70% using the non-self-checkout. Now it's probably 95% going to self-checkout. So even though it's very basic AI or places in SF, the younger generation, it's also generational, are using a lot more than, let's say, even Uber. If you're in SF, you're going to see more Waymo than any other car sometimes. It's crazy, right? So it is mind-boggling. What is going to happen to customer service? What is going to happen to self-driving? What is going to happen to these various industries from blue collar to white collar jobs? And it does seem that the barrier is different. Like there are some like clinical matters, like financial. You got Sarbanes-Oxley, you got SEC regulations, you got HIPAA and healthcare. So there seems to be some industries that are heavily regulated. You just can't. AI might have a slower impact on its proliferation versus other areas as well. So, what barriers, financial, expertise, do you foresee AI is going to encounter when it comes to AI-related workforce changes, including, social pressures as far as, job displacements?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it makes me think of some of the tensions that we already have for some other. You mentioned the customer service. You mentioned the shift in the grocery stores, for example, the big box, where we've kind of become used to seeing more of those self-checks open up and fewer at the full service, as you will. There's another one, and that's the menu-driven stuff that we do on the phone, where we're calling customer service to get help with our internet or our phone service or something like that. And how we moved pretty quickly into that, and then we moved more recently into the demand that I be one or two steps most away from speaking to an agent. The number of times I hear somebody, like I'm sitting in an airport and somebody's on the phone saying, agent, I know what they're trying to do. They want the live person for something that as yet the intelligence is not offered. The menu, they can't do enough clicks to get to the kinds of things that we do. I think that's always going to be, maybe not always, but for the foreseeable future, that's going to be one of the barriers. The nuances in language. In this country alone, the hundreds of languages that are spoken, the dialects that go with them, for example, are going to present some of those challenges, even as AI is constantly and continuing to learn, language learning. For example, there's still that personal element that goes to it. AI is it's going to be tough, on the one hand. I'm pretty comfortable. I ordered some door hinges the other day. Amazon presents me with all these different ones, and then I looked over at True Value Hardware and what they had, whatever, pretty quickly allowing some things to sort of narrow it down for me and select. But conversely, as a cook, I still go to the grocery store and I want to pick out my own tomatoes. I'm going one tomato at a time to make my bolognese, my sauce, whatever, because that's something that I want. I want to do that in a way. I don't want just a bag grabbed and put on a rack. I know that can be done, but I care about things, and I think it's that level of caring that's going to take the longest, until we sort of sense and feel and believe that AI cares, if that makes sense. That's going to be one of those barriers. And you mentioned another one. I think it's cost. I said earlier, that's why it's good to be in a space where we can experiment and try and get some things sometimes for free. Try this out for us to see if it works. And yes, you may be giving up something. You may be giving up some of your identity information or some things like that to do it. You have to be aware of that. But to get a sense of what may or may not work, I think is really important. And that's going to help determine, I think, the value proposition, as we sometimes say, right? What will we spend for, and what will we choose not to, and what will be the limits that will be placed on that.
Do you foresee any programs to be added, modified, or even retired in response to the rise of AI?
Boy, that's not something that I've given my headspace to yet. It clearly is one that we need to, though. Just in the same way that the changes from the Industrial Revolution and assembly and manufacturing and some of that, because that we saw that in automobiles, for example. the automation and the use of robots and things like that, and then the proliferation of, well, who can be trained or upskilled then to do the maintenance work on the robots themselves, the programming or things like that, and who cannot, what were some of the limitations to that. I think we'll see, I'll stay with higher ed for a moment. I have a lot of friends, and myself, I'm included in it as a college president, right? Working in advancement, fundraising, and so forth. I think we'll see it really continue to proliferate, and maybe not eliminate, but it's going to do some of the work in stewardship in terms of being able to personalize at the first level, at the very least, yes. Thank you notes, asks, annual campaigns that come out year after year to existing donors and new donors. I think already we're seeing AI used for that. It's a matter of how an institution still does that and comes off as being authentic and personalized and real. If it's all coming out of a box, if a vendor is doing it for you, and someone starts seeing 2 or 3 of those that look the same, they're going to say, this doesn't feel like the place that I gave tens of thousands of dollars to, and now maybe I'm not going to give this year. But I think there's a space to replace some things, to compress and take some of that time away. Staying in that field of advancement for just a second more, for example, if I can entrust AI to do a good job of personalizing some of the thank yous and some of the messaging that goes on in our Great Give Day, while I can have my team of humans making those very specific kinds of calls and visits that we know are really important to the giving equation, I'll put AI to work on that. And I'm probably not going to lose my workforce. I'm going to actually use them better, and we'll probably be even more effective in our productivity.
Do you think there could be a change in how our degree programs, like you get a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate, like the link for those programs as well as how they're structured, given the fact that knowledge is not really proprietary to universities or higher education anymore. And actually, higher education, we've had discussions with this. There are multiple ways to actually get trained and get a good paying job. How do you see higher education, I guess, degree granting institutions potentially change as a result of AI?
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of that, in the instability, uncertainty that we're in higher education in general right now, in this space at this time in 2025, for example. One of the elements of that is accreditation, for example. You've got accrediting bodies that have been regionally based, knew who their customers were, if you will, with the institutions, and had some things that were very formulaic in terms of certificates and associate degrees and bachelor's degrees and credit units and credit hours and things like that. Now some of the instability is, well, maybe we need, as we're hearing, well, maybe there should be other kinds of accreditors. Well, that only speaks to indirectly, actually pretty directly, well, other kinds of learning, other kinds of degrees, packets of learning. Just at about the time where some of the providers we thought we were losing things like MOOCs. we thought we were losing some of the online mass providers. I think it's coming back into question. We're seeing institutions getting approvals for a 3-year bachelor's degree, but why is it a 3-year bachelor's degree? I think we'll see ourselves less tied to years and units, and even more so, focused on outcomes. For example, what is someone who's completed a program, and let's not put years or credits on that, able to do? In other words, through authentic assessment, through the kinds of assessments that we would expect for someone in a medical field, in a allied health field and an automotive field, technical field, whatever it might be. If on the consumer side, we're just saying, can you do this for me? Are we really going to look into whether or not they had 96 hours, 48 hours, 3 years, 6 years, whatever it might be? I think, the saying that time is relative, that's that's mostly a saying for physics and astrophysicists and so forth, right? Going back, into the beginning of the last century. I think it's becoming very relevant for higher education as well. More on-demand learning, more packeted learning, more parcels of learning. I think our students are showing that as well. What am I going to get out of this? Well, then I want to go do this. I'll do this. I'll do that. And it's not about it being easy. It's about getting to the end game. We see more and more of that.
Well, certainly there's been a lot of noise about accredited bodies lately. So we shall see how all of that goes. And who would have thought a year ago we would be, the trade schools would be looked at as more favorable from the administration perspective versus, institutions like Harvard. So things are definitely in flux. If you could design a future-facing education initiative from scratch, what would it be? Here's a clear canvas, and you don't have to just keep it. Let's assume from this day where students are born, moving forward, right? How do you perceive? Put on your John Dewey hat. How do you perceive education and training should evolve?
Yeah, I think it's. I love the question. I think it's a corollary to the old question I've done in a few different workshops, and that with like governing boards and faculty and staff all in the room together. And somebody says, if we closed your university on Friday at 5 p.m. and reopened on Monday at 8, what would be the same and what would be different? And it's like, and cost is not an issue. Nothing is like an issue. It's like, it's a little bit like that. So what would it look like? I think so much of what's coming, what's in development, and what we should expect. And if I were a part of it, I would be excited about it. I would see partnership-based learning is what I would call it. And what I mean by that is, it's going to have the elements where it's on demand, and it's going to be really accessible, kind of 24/7. Now that doesn't just default then into, oh, that's distance learning, Tom. We already have that. You can go online, enroll in a course, take it. Now I'm talking partnership-based learning, where in the midst of, if I enroll in the evening to take learning, whatever that looks like, it's a course, a packet of learning, whatever it is, and I enter into that, the partnership piece is going to be, on the one hand, excellent content, excellent user experience, user interface, if there's, in terms of that piece that it is going to be based on kind of a learning platform, an LMS, but then who are my partners in that learning? How do I have on demand through potentially AI, human instructors, combination of both, when I have a question? When I want some initial evaluation of my work, I want to look at a draft. I don't want you to rewrite it for me and get it done. It's not going to be a prompt to write this paper for me or solve this equation for me or something like that. Who are my partners in learning? And I'm going to be open to, the static asynchronous reading, video, whatever is coming at me in that way. But then also, can I pause in the moment and get help? And it might start with something that's more like when I'm sort of stuck doing an airline reservation and the bot sort of senses that I've been waiting, looks like I've been on this page for a while. Do you need help? Partnership learning is going to be, if I say yes, and I'd like it from the instructor, well, maybe it's 3 a.m. and the instructor's not available, but maybe the chat bot then is saying, here, let me try first. Let's see how far we can take this. And then if not, I'll partner you up with your instructor is available tomorrow let's make that appointment. Does that work for you? And see all those things in concert. That's going to drive me to want to do my learning in that way. I can do it at my pace. I can see how far I can take it on my own. Oh, I've got some supports from artificial intelligence if and as I need it, but I also have access to that expertise of my faculty member. And then I probably have some simulation or some modeling if I need to do that as well, but, depending on the type of course. That's what I would throw myself into, is, partnership-based learning on the way that I've just described it.
So obviously, with this entire discussion about tariffs and manufacturing and jobs in America, when we look at the transformation of mechanization, automation beginning of the century, it's almost taken a full swing. So if you look at the 1900s, 40% of the job force was doing agriculture work. Now it's 2%. Textile workers was over 20%, less than 1%. Blacksmiths, railroad, carriage operator, telephone operators, elevator operators, typists, that was about 70% of the job force at that time, right? But even lately, if you look at like retail cashiers, taxi drivers, warehouse workers, customer service reps, stock traders, 80s, it's not like we had the Industrial Revolution and job displacement stopped. We've been having job displacement every decade ever since in different forms, whether internet. This one, because of robotics and intelligence, is even more disruptive because you could have robots doing so many things that we could actually see happening right now. So I guess the question is, even if we could bring all manufacturing back to America, there's no guarantee we could keep it, not because of jobs going abroad, because because industries are going to find out how to save money, right? So I guess the scariest question is this, right? The Industrial Revolution took about 70 to 80 years. It was a long cycle. It started in England, and continued into the 50s, really.
Mm-hmm.
This could happen in 10 to 20 years. I mean, the expand by which the AI revolution could happen and how fast it could impact the concern is, do we have enough run rate to retool our society to take on the complementary jobs working alongside AI? That's the last part is really my question. The rest was commentary. Do we have enough run rate to retool an aging population?
Well, the aging population, or just the population itself. Look at our own population growth. That's a factor in your question as well. Do we have the people now and in the future to do that? I'm not so sure about that in this country, and just in terms of population growth, or mostly stagnant population growth. So you could bring all the jobs. You could bring certain types of jobs back, sectors back in some way. And even if you somehow could say, and those are jobs that people want, do we have the people to do those jobs and the ones that are developing? As you were saying, agriculture, for example, what it was 100 years ago, what it was just 50 years ago, for example. My grandparents had a farm. I worked on it. Some of those same farms now are proliferating in wind power, for example. And all that it takes to do those installations, to do that monitoring, to do all that is not all through robotics and AI or anything. So there's been a shift to what is happening in those same spaces, for example, and who's doing that work. So I don't have a good answer for you. That's the crystal ball that would allow us to really do some interesting investment. That wouldn't be very honest if we could really see into it. Yeah, I think that's the multi-billion-dollar question. is what you said. Do we have the run rate? Do we have the people? And then in the world of what you and I do, is it an educated workforce? Can we, how do we get and guide and do it in a timely way that they're getting the learning that they need, the training that they need for the jobs of that time in the future? I don't know.
Now, when I visited Singapore about a year and a half ago, it's a small country, right? It's probably the population is less than South Dakota. So it's easier to manage that smaller population, but they have a clear strategy, which is moving up the education ladder so you become much, much more of an expertise as they look at their future workforce. That's what they're training for, that our workforce is so trained from elementary all the way to higher education that we could fully specialize in skills that other workers, skilled workers of other nations can't keep up with. Thom, last question. This is an open-ended question. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I think it's, a little bit of what we talked about. First, JP, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to be with another thought partner and get to expand more on this. And that, so one of the things I would want to say, what I would leave everyone with is, it may seem a little cliche, but if ever there's been a time to that phrase, stay curious, to focus on that sense of wonder, I would say it's right now. And that is to engage, to learn, to read, to listen, to not, it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and say, this is overwhelming. There's so much going on. I see AI this, AI that. It's above the fold every day when I read whatever my newspaper is. If I'm hopefully reading a newspaper of some kind of, I think I'll just wait and see. This is not a wait and see. This is an engage and explore and experiment, and then bring that conversation, in with others. And then I would just add to that in the education space that it should be something that's bringing us together, not dividing us apart. We should be looking to say, open the questions with, how might we use this to be better teachers? How might we use it to achieve better outcomes? Because in questions of the public about the value of post-secondary education, for example, if we start answering with those with, here's how we're doing this for the better of all, here's how we do something for to improve people's health, the length of their life, the quality of that life, then that's going to temper some of that elitism, or that we do things in ways that other people don't understand, or it's only for a select crowd. So coming together around how we use these tools, how we use them to improve lives for the greater good, I think is a really important time to do that. So that's what I would add as well.
President Chesney, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining the Plexus Presidential Podcast. For more information, please visit us at plexus.com/solutions. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.